India's strong response to Trump's tariffs dead economy jibe. Piyush Goyal's top 5 points. Piyush Goyal's 6-minute statement was also an answer to Trump's jab about India's economy. In the past 2 days, the U.S. President Donald Trump announced a 25% tariff on India, warned of penalties, expressed displeasure over BRICS membership, and called India a dead economy. This turn of events shocked everyone, since Trump had previously been confident about a trade deal with India, though that hasn't materialized ahead of his August 1 tariff deadline. India's response has been clear. To counter Trump's criticism, the government emphasized protecting farmers, workers, entrepreneurs, and MSMEs, highlighting their national interests. A key point in India-U.S. trade talks is Trump's insistence on India opening up its agriculture and dairy sectors, which are both economically and politically sensitive. India has maintained that these sectors are off the table for trade agreements with other countries. The phrase dead economy has become a recurring comment from Trump, who argued that India's economic situation is deteriorating. However, India has countered that the current economic landscape is the fastest-growing global economy, with international institutions and economists seeing India as a bright spot. According to the IMF, India is projected to surpass Japan in size by the end of this year and overtake Germany in the coming years. Goyal further noted that India is progressing toward becoming a self-sufficient or Atmanirbhar economy, driven by initiatives like the Make in India program. He stressed that India will continue its inclusive growth journey towards Viksit Bharat 2047, emphasizing confidence in its path forward. Meanwhile, Goyal highlighted India's commitment to mutually beneficial trade deals with countries such as the UAE, UK, Australia, and EFTA members. Despite the potential challenges posed by the 25% tariff rate starting August 1st, and the possibility of additional penalties for arms trade with Russia, Goyal acknowledged that ongoing discussions with the U.S. remain open. The future of trade talks remains uncertain, but Goyal urged continued engagement and openness in the context of global economic challenges. How Trump's tariffs impact India's economy, growth, and exports in jeopardy. The recent announcement by former U.S. President Donald Trump regarding the imposition of a 25% tariff on goods imported from India has raised significant concerns among experts about its potential impact on India's economic growth and export capabilities. This decision could pose a serious challenge to India's economic outlook, as analysts are still trying to gauge the full extent of the repercussions. Trump has also indicated that there will be an additional, unspecified penalty on India, which adds another layer of uncertainty to the situation. In a post shared on his Truth Social platform, Trump stated that this penalty would take effect on August 1st, targeting India for its purchases of Russian oil and military equipment during a time when global sentiment is urging Russia to cease its aggressive actions in Ukraine. Experts emphasize that understanding the specifics of this penalty will be crucial in assessing the actual economic fallout from Trump's decision. Aditi Nair, the chief economist at the ratings agency ICRA, expressed that the proposed tariff and penalty are more severe than previously anticipated, which could hinder India's GDP growth. She noted that the degree of this negative impact will largely depend on the magnitude of the penalties imposed. ICRA has already revised its GDP growth forecast for India for the current financial year down from 6.5% to 6.2%, attributing this adjustment to the adverse effects of the tariff increases. Another financial institution, Nomura, has labeled the tariffs as growth negative, predicting that India's GDP could suffer a decline of 0.2% as a direct consequence of these announcements. The Indian stock market reacted unfavorably to the news, opening lower as trading commenced for the day. Nilesh Shah, a fund manager, remarked that the market had anticipated a more favorable tariff agreement, given the alignment of long-term strategic interests between the U.S. and India. Over the past few months, India and the U.S. have engaged in multiple rounds of negotiations aimed at establishing a trade deal. In an effort to appease the U.S., India had even lowered tariffs on certain products, such as bourbon whiskey and motorcycles. However, the U.S. currently faces a trade deficit of $45 billion with India, a situation that Trump is eager to rectify. The combination of a 25% tariff and additional penalties could place India at a disadvantage compared to other Asian nations like Vietnam and China, which are also vying for foreign investment and industrial growth. Rahul Ahluwalia from the Foundation's The Economic Development pointed out that this situation complicates India's competitive position in attracting investment. In contrast, U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports have seen a significant reduction from 145% to 30%, following negotiations in Geneva and London. The two nations have until August 12 to finalize a long-term trade agreement. Additionally, Trump recently reached a deal with Vietnam, agreeing to impose tariffs of 20%, a stark contrast to the 46% rate that was initially proposed in April. With India's tariffs now on par with those of its competitors, the anticipated shift of export supply chains, particularly in sectors like textiles, to India seems increasingly unlikely. Agneshwar Sen, a trade policy expert at EY India, warned that if the tariffs remain in place, they could directly impact vital sectors such as marine products, pharmaceuticals, textiles, leather, and automobiles, where trade between India and the U.S. has been particularly strong. The announcement from Trump has elicited widespread disappointment and concern from economists, exporters, and industry leaders in India. Harshavardhan Agarwal, president of the industry body FICCI, expressed hope that this imposition of higher tariffs would be a temporary measure and that a permanent trade agreement would be reached soon. Dr. Ajay Sahai, who leads a Federation of Indian Exporting Organizations, noted that the tariffs would necessitate new price negotiations between U.S. buyers and Indian sellers to determine how much of the 25% increase exporters can absorb. Tariffs are essentially taxes levied on imported goods, and higher tariffs can indirectly affect exporters by making products more expensive for consumers, which can lead to decreased demand. This situation may force exporters to lower their prices to remain competitive, ultimately squeezing their profit margins. In response to Trump's announcement, India's Commerce Ministry stated that it is currently evaluating the implications of this decision. The Indian government has reiterated its commitment to a mutually beneficial bilateral trade agreement, while emphasizing the importance of safeguarding the interests of farmers, entrepreneurs, and micro, small, and tribal businesses, and medium enterprises, MSMEs. This focus on protecting sensitive sectors like agriculture and dairy has been a significant sticking point in the negotiations. The opposition Congress Party in India has criticized the government following Trump's announcement. In a post on X, the Congress Party pointed out that while Prime Minister Narendra Modi had previously campaigned for Trump and embraced him warmly during a 2019 rally in the U.S., the imposition of such harsh tariffs represents a significant failure in foreign policy. Mark Linscott, a former U.S. government trade representative and member of the U.S.-India Strategic Partnership Forum, noted that Trump's linking of the trade deal to India's economic ties with Russia complicates the negotiations further. He remarked that this adds a new dimension to the discussions, making it unclear how these issues can be integrated into a trade agreement. Since the onset of the war in Ukraine, India has maintained its historical ties with Russia and defended its oil purchases, arguing that as a nation reliant on energy imports, it must secure oil at the best possible prices to protect the livelihoods of millions of impoverished Indians. India's reliance on Russian military equipment has also been gradually decreasing. Despite the challenges, Linscott believes that both India and the U.S. have significant shared interests in resuming negotiations and finalizing an interim deal. The U.S. is India's largest foreign export market, with bilateral trade reaching $190 billion, and there is a stated goal to increase this figure to $500 billion in the coming years. Linscott emphasized that for Trump to put his mark on any deal with India, it would require Prime Minister Modi to engage directly in negotiations, particularly regarding commitments related to energy purchases, military equipment, and investments in the U.S. For reasons that remain unclear, this direct engagement did not occur. While Trump has referred to India as a good friend, he has also consistently criticized the country's high tariffs. In a particularly sharp post on his Truth Social platform, he stated, "I don't care what India does with Russia. They can take their dead economies down together for all I care. We have done very little business with India. Their tariffs are too high, among the highest in the world." Despite the escalating tensions, it is anticipated that negotiations between India and the U.S. will continue throughout August, with a U.S. delegation expected to visit India next month to work towards a comprehensive trade agreement. Many hope that the tariffs will be negotiated down and that the elevated reciprocal tariff rate of 25% will be a temporary measure until a detailed trade deal is finalized. The two parties have set a deadline for the fall to conclude this agreement. However, even in the best-case scenario, the tariffs may still fall within the 15 to 20% range, which many view as disappointing given India's advanced stage of negotiations. Nomura has suggested that while the impact of these tariffs could be somewhat contained, considering that the Indian economy is more domestically focused and less dependent on goods trade compared to other Asian nations, Trump's decision may increase the likelihood of monetary policy easing, prompting India's central bank to consider deeper rate cuts to support economic growth. Understanding Trump's trade feud with India. Key insights. President Trump is firing up a major trade storm as he prepares to hit India with stiff tariffs. But this escalating clash goes far beyond simple economics. Here's why this feud matters and where it could lead. What's happening? Trump announced plans to slap 25% tariffs on Indian imports, starting this Friday. That's higher than the 15% levies recently imposed on the EU and Japan, and just short of the 30% tariffs threatening China. The move comes as Trump also expands tariffs on multiple other nations, a strategy he claims will level the playing field, but critics say risks global economic fallout. But here's the catch. India is not the typical target. Unlike China, India isn't the U.S.'s largest trade partner. It ranks 12th, with $129 billion in bilateral goods trade last year. Yet India has become a key diversion for companies like Apple, which moved U.S. iPhone production there to sidestep Chinese tariffs. Now, those same manufacturers could face new costs that disrupt supply chains. Why Trump is targeting India? This isn't just about trade. It's about relationships. Trump has hammered 3 key points. 1. Sky-high tariffs. India imposes tariffs exceeding 100% on some goods, which Trump claims block U.S. exporters. He's called them too high. They're some of the toughest in the world. 2. Trade deficit concerns. The U.S. ran a $45 billion trade deficit with India in 2024, which Trump links to these barriers. 3. Russian oil purchases. Trump has repeatedly condemned India for continuing to buy Russian energy despite the Ukraine war, calling it a tacit endorsement of Russia's actions. He's framed this as a moral issue, saying India and China are Russia's largest buyers of energy, while urging them to stop the killing in Ukraine. India's response: New Delhi hasn't backed down. In a measured statement, India acknowledged Trump's comments but stressed ongoing bilateral negotiations. "We remain committed to concluding a fair trade agreement," it said, while warning they'll take all steps necessary to secure national interest. The controversy. This feud raises tough questions. Should the U.S. punish India for its trade policies, or is this a strategic misstep given India's role in reducing reliance on China? Is pressuring India over Russian oil fair, or should allies have flexibility in maintaining energy security? What's next? Talks are scheduled to resume in late August, but the tariffs could derail progress. Experts warn these levies might force India to retaliate, creating a domino effect in global markets. The bottom line: this trade dispute is more complex than it seems. At its core, a clash between Trump's America First policies and India's push to protect its industries. The stakes are high, not just for import taxes, but for diplomatic relations and global economic stability. What's your take? Should the U.S. prioritize trade fairness, or nurture strategic alliances like this one? Let us know in the comments below.